It's definitely maniac weather today. It's a beautiful day. Lots of people out. Maybe not compared to back in the day, but certainly compared to pandemic days and rainy days. There was supposed to be a Luigi Mangione hearing today down at the court, but it was postponed for reasons that I'm not privy to. How are we doing with the chemtrails today? But it's been postponed, so I don't know. I just wanted to come out and talk to everybody about some of the information that's coming out with the JFK files release, and also to just sort of check out what's going on. I figure, you're going to do a maniac event like Luigi. There's going to be people coming from Jersey and all over who maybe didn't get the memo that the dude's hearing is postponed. It's adjourned, to use a fancy lawyer word. I'm not a lawyer. Nothing I ever say is legal anything. It's just my opinion. Here is the Cordoza Law School, Benjamin Cordoza. But so these JFK files, it's a good thing they released them, because I think they realized that if they didn't, you're gonna miss Epstein and JFK. It would have been a huge hit to the credibility of everybody involved in the Donald Trump administration. But luckily, they brought him out. Nice pants, lady. I was walking down here and there was an old woman just walking with a sign. Maybe she drew it. It was like kind of a nice hand-drawn, maybe this old lady was an artist, but it showed a picture of a baby being ripped out of a mother, like a kind of a cartoonish, but well-drawn, of a baby being pulled out of a mother's arms, and it said ICE and don't separate families. And I just said to her, what about the families that are separated when somebody in their family gets killed by a person who shouldn't be here? And of course they have nothing to say. I mean, there's just like a dumb old lady who I just asked her that and she was perplexed. I mean, these people are so stupid. Why doesn't that old lady open her apartment? She can make breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, my grandmother, when we used to have all the cousins, she'd have 5 kids in the apartment and make us shake and bake chicken and green jello and stuff like that. Let this old lady adopt some of these, homeless maniacs who are rolling around, and then she can do something. Walking around with a sign, you're little more than just a pain in the ass. A lot of people were really and stuff like that. Let this people, you work with people for years and years. These types of disagreements come up, but I'm glad that we were able to resolve it, because Larry is an important, not important figure. I don't even want to call it. People fight back against school with the stuff now at a time where I realize how Russia can so all this failover stuff happening in a spot that I walk all the time. I wish it would give me a little beep when it loses the network. It doesn't do anything. Are we still live? So let's talk about the JFK. Yeah, people say buffering, so I don't know what happened there. But it should come back. Hopefully, don't die. I'm watching it now on the other phone. Yeah, it was good to see Larry. Frozen, buffering. Should be back. Why is it doing this? Come on. Buffer. I think it's now me looking at the phone saying, is it back? Larry is awesome. And so we'll do more shows with Larry starting next week, and that's going to be sponsor exclusive shows. So I hope people will become sponsors. We can't do this stuff without your support and sponsorship. And so we're just working on the details to get Larry's Substack going. He's got to, link it up to all kinds of stuff to make it work. So he'll be back in a regular slot on Tuesdays, and we can do those shows. And see, I want to talk to Larry about, I like the citizens' grand juries, of course, and I found it very educational to help us understand just like what a grand jury is about, what an indictment is about, etc. But I think it's a big reach to take a bill of indictment from a podcast simulated grand jury like that. And I know what Larry is saying. The grand jury is the people own it and all that. So again, everything he's doing is good, and I understand the purpose and the meaning, but I don't think that the exact output of that is going to necessarily have some direct change. Whereas what I want to start asking him about is, like, what if, we create an outline? I mean, I'm not trying to say that I think that I have the knowledge or ability to do this, but just from an idea standpoint, what about writing an outline for a Judicial Modernization Act? I'm hearing a lot of people say that Congress can abolish the district courts and somehow create a new system of courts that would sidestep this issue of it being, is like a mini Lassie, of it being virtually impossible to impeach a judge. So I don't know, I think we need that. And I just think there's a lot of people in Congress who, like somebody like Eli Crane, he's a very smart, nice, courageous guy, but I just don't think he has a lot of legal experience. He was in the military and then he started his own company, but I don't know that he really thinks about things in terms of the law or lawyers or legal writing. He shouldn't be writing that in the park. And if we could provide him with an outline or a document or somehow help his staff, draft a new thing. Anyway, that's something that we could explore. I thought we might see some pro-Luigi maniacs here in the park, but it just seems to be pretty much nice weather. Here's somebody with a sign, might have something interesting to say. But so the JFK files, they've been released. Some people say nothing in there. Some people say, I've seen people go as far as saying, like, oh, this proves that JFK was killed by a lone gunman. What? How does it do that? First of all, it doesn't. But second of all, I mean, it's been out for a day or something. I think I've seen this lunatic around before. So there's a lot of people. This guy is for weed. So there's a lot of people who got the JFK files, and I mean, given the speed that they put out their posts, it appears they just immediately searched for the word Jew, found one line where a Cuban guy is saying, our backers are Jews now, so we have tons of money. And then people like, aha, Israel assassinated JFK. So, I mean, I don't think that's very good logic. We've got a transcript of a statement from one Cuban guy who said that. I don't understand how that... There's so many other unanswered questions that make that conclusion basically impossible. This guy's a douchebag. But it seems much more likely to me, because there was, who was it, David Atlee Phillips or Jesus Angleton? There was one of these famous CIA rogues who there was another line they found that this guy was the guy at the CIA who was interfacing with Mossad. And so they take that to mean, aha, Mossad controls the world. And even though Israel was only around for 15 years at the time that Kennedy was assassinated, somehow that group of people managed to take control and maintain control clandestinely, according to these people, of the entire United States government, rather than the CIA saying, hey, let's have this one guy interface with Mossad so that whatever he's doing is incredibly compartmentalized and most people don't know about it. And if something goes sideways, we can sort of make sure that he goes away and then nobody ever finds out about it. But what we're going to do is, like if you wanted to rob a bank or do some crime but not get caught for it, maybe if you were a sinister criminal mastermind, you would hire somebody else to do the crime on your behalf. Then, if you were a super sinister criminal, perhaps you could set it up so that the police catch the person that you've hired to do this crime. Like, let's say the crime is killing someone. Once it's done, it's not like you need to collect the money from a bank robbery. Maybe you want the police to arrest this person because you've set up other circumstances. So when that guy says, oh, no, I didn't do it, that person who hired me did it, the person who hired you maybe has some relationship with the police or some other evidence to fool the police, to frame you and get you to go to jail for it. And the reason I think that's what happened is all the other evidence, except for those 2 lines and a couple of selective things that you have to be willfully ignorant and wanting to arrive at that answer in order to get there, it just doesn't make any sense. And there are so many other people who wanted to kill him. Someone saying IPAC was established from the days of the assassination. Look, I'm not denying that Israel wanted nuclear weapons and JFK didn't want them to have them. What I'm saying is someone in the CIA did want them to have them, and they didn't want it to look like the United States was giving it to them. Because then they could say, oh no, what a terrible thing. Someone stole this from us. But now Israel has that technology, and just like I described before of hiring a hitman or utilizing a cutout, now you could say, hey Israel, why don't you use a tactical nuke to take out Iran or to attack whoever it is that the United States doesn't like, and then we'll just keep blaming it on you, and don't worry, we'll give you billions of dollars and everything. I mean, that makes a lot more sense. And then all this other stuff about Israel versus Palestine or Zionism versus Nazism, this is a polarizing, prescribed argument that's designed to pit people against one another and to just keep us arguing like crazy. I think it's possible that the entire JFK assassination has things like that baked into the cake. So in other words, people see these documents from 1963 and, well, let me get to the evidence I want to talk about with Lee Harvey Oswald, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. See, it's nice to be able to get some of that summertime or spring right now. Is this girl making lemonade? What do we got here? I don't even want to engage with these fucking people. Ridiculous. So anyway, the things that I'm interested in seeing about the JFK assassination are things that lie on the periphery. And the reason for that is, if not all, a huge portion of what is being released yesterday, today, and moving forward is already known. Now that's different than it being declassified or admitted to by the government, but I see a lot of people posting things that they think are revelations that a lot of people have known about, certainly for 34 years. You know, there was a ton of information that came out after the 1991 JFK movie, and then even more after the, maybe it was 1994 or 1995, what was it, one of them was the Assassination Records Review Board There was one in 1972 or 5 or something, kind of concurrent with the church committee hearings. And then there was another one that was sort of sparked by the Oliver Stone movie. And a lot of information came out after that. But most people weren't paying attention to it. So I'm not criticizing this release. I mean, if all it does is spark a new generation of people to be interested in this, that's good. Conversations. Look at this. The 2-neck guitar. That always reminds me of Cheap Trick, the band. That guy had a 2-neck guitar. So I've been interested in the JFK assassination since 1991. My dad took me to see that movie. I remember. I'm pretty sure we saw it at the United Artists Cinema 150, which is defunct. It was the largest movie theater screen on the East Coast of the United States. I saw Star Wars at that movie theater. A lot of movies. Aliens. A lot of cool movies like that. Oh, no, Aliens I saw at a different theater. But that was like the big, great theater. Anyway, I was very interested in it since then. I've gone to JFK conventions. I've met with people who were witnesses. I've interviewed Beverly, is it Oliver? What is her last name? The woman who took the picture from the grass. I should contact her again. I mean, a lot of these people are getting kind of old. This thing happened 60-something years ago. Beverly was like 18 or 19 at the time that it happened. But obviously she's in her 70s or maybe even her 80s by now. And so one of the things that I had found, 2015, I went to the National Archives in College Park, Maryland, and at that time you could declassify stuff. They had like boxes and boxes of unknown stuff that you could go through, and then if you found something like this, you'd take it to this desk and say, hey, can I declassify this? And they would review it for, same day kind of thing, and then let you know, yeah, okay. So now then they let me scan it and do whatever, and I had a scanner with me when I went there. Wait, I got a little bit of a patter to go with this, so I'll play it again when I tell you. But I had a scanner. I brought this like super fancy AGFA. It wasn't a drum scanner, but it was like the craziest high quality transparency scanner you could get without spending $1 million at that time. And once it's declassified, now anybody could go there. I mean, they didn't like give it to me or anything like that. They just, label it and mark it and whatever. And I guess if it's an innocuous picture like that, they just do it. So this is a picture taken inside Michael and Ruth Payne's garage. And Michael and Ruth Payne were friends of the Oswalds. Marina was staying there. This sign here says, voluntarily given to the Dallas PD by Ruth Payne and Mrs. Oswald at the Payne's residence in Irving, Texas. That's a stereo realist 3D camera and a stereo slide viewer right there. So we also have, down in the lower corner here, a Viewmaster reel. I can't make out what it says on there. I don't know what reel that is. But obviously Lee Harvey Oswald was a stereo enthusiast, and I've confirmed this with Judith Very Baker, who has presented a lot of evidence that she was romantically involved with Lee Harvey Oswald. I believe her. So, but look at what we have here. We've got 10 boxes of slides, and then we've got this 11th box of slides, but these sort of smaller flat boxes almost look like side slides sitting next to each other. Why would we have some slides stored that way and others stored vertically? Well, here are some Kodak stereo slides from approximately the 1960s. Now, I got this picture off of eBay, and I think it's in Spanish or some foreign language. I can't really read what that says, but in the upper left-hand corner, it looks to me like it says stereo, stereoscopic, and it's got a little, accent over the E, so stereo. Maybe it's, I don't know, French, maybe Spanish, but the point is, we've got all these side-by-side boxes. I think those might be 3D slides, and then he's got his monoscopic slides in that one box. Now, I also can't really make out what this says, but some of these boxes say something, and that one looks like it says stereo color transparencies. This starts with an M, it looks like something color transparencies. I don't know what, but some of these boxes look like they say stereo color transparencies. And so this one, this one was upside down. So I selected that in Photoshop, and it's a little easier to kind of make out if we turn it upside down. But I don't know, can people maybe see this more clearly than I can? It looks to me like it says stereo color transparency, and that says something else, color transparency. But the question is, are these 10 boxes of stereoscopic photographs taken by Lee Harvey Oswald, and then an 11th box of a bunch of just 35 millimeter slides, monoscopic normal slides? I don't know. But it seems like it would be. I mean, that's all the stuff that was in the garage that Ruth Paine and Marina Oswald gave to the cops on November, was it the 23rd? When did they say that that was turned over? It was either the 22nd or the 23rd. It's fast work by the cops. Let's just take a look. 11/22/63. So you're telling me approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the president is shot, and sometime within the next, I don't know, are they over at the Payne's house at midnight? What time did they get there? 8, 9 hours? They've already figured out that it's Lee Harvey Oswald, that his wife is living with a friend because they're estranged, and they went to that house and they collected all that stuff and photographed it. Now, what's interesting is, I'm pretty sure that was the document that I had declassified, because I do remember this concept of asking the National Archives to declassify something and them doing it and thinking, that's crazy that that's all there is to it. I mean, I guess, again, the more important the document, maybe that wouldn't happen, but I'm pretty sure it was 10 years ago, it was 2015, and I didn't like write it down or anything. They don't give you like a receipt from declassifying. Just literally, the National Archives there in College Park, it's like the biggest, fanciest library I've ever been to, like the best library I've ever been to. And I would actually say that that right over there is the second fanciest library I've ever been to. That is the NYU Bobst Library, and in many ways, it's like a lot more technologically advanced. I haven't been in there in probably more than 10 years also, but at the time I was. It's more advanced even than the New York Public Library, which makes sense because it's funded by millions and millions of stolen dollars taken by the also tax-exempt piece of shit NYU. But the point is, the National Archives, I declassified that thing, and so now for the last 10 years, I think anybody could go in there and see that. But I have never seen that photo of Lee Harvey Oswald's stereo realist 3D camera. I've never seen that before I got it from the National Archives. And I've thought about it ever since then. It actually inspired me because in 2015, remember, 21st Century 3D was in the dumps. The last major production we did was in 2014 in Dubai. And it was sort of, I was coming to grips with, is this going out of business? Am I going to do something different? And so my first idea was to continue in 3D, and I wanted to make a documentary about, I guess I had this idea after finding that picture. What does she think of the assassination? I could now ask her what she thinks about 2 assassinations. But the point is, I think that was what inspired the JFK 3D idea, because I guess I was just, I don't remember why I was motivated to go there. Maybe I had already known about it, but I saw that 3D camera and I was like, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if you could get Lee Harvey Oswald's 3D photos, and my initial thought was just to put it out in a documentary in 3D, and that would be cool, because I think my angle then was to try to find a new application for 3D where it wasn't just always Avenger movies and X-Men movies, and to make the documentary something that needed 3D in order for you to be able to see it, because a Netflix documentary about Lee Harvey Oswald's 3D photos in 2D, you get it. It wouldn't be that interesting. So this was the idea. But I hit a brick wall because I was never able to find any other reference to anything 3D having to do with Lee Harvey Oswald. I've spoken about how on that same trip, I discovered there are 3 photos taken in the backyard, and there was an anomaly there that I used 3D to analyze. But I want to focus on this camera and the slides, because, you know, the FBI should have that stuff. Where are the Lee Harvey Oswald 3D slides? And what is the content of the photography? Remember, there's all this mystery surrounding Lee Harvey Oswald allegedly going to Mexico City, Lee Harvey Oswald going to the Soviet Union. He's an avid photographer. He worked at a photo place. He even had knowledge of photo compositing, which was incredibly difficult to do in the 1960s. I used to do it in the 80s and 90s using those old traditional techniques. You had to be very artistically skilled, cut masks and double expose, and you had to be able to do difficult work in an enclosed room, the dark room with chemicals. It was a certain kind of set of skills, and Lee Harvey Oswald was quite skilled. Now wait a minute, what is the Boring Cars? Does that have something to do with the Boring Company? Oh, look at that mini spoiler. The guy's got the carbon fiber. That's awesome. What is going on with this car? That's the same car Lenny Lipton used to have. Or is this the Toyota one? Yeah, Lenny had the Subaru one, right? Wasn't that thing? That's the TR, oh no, the Toyota. I don't know, I don't remember, but he had GR or whatever that is. That's a confusing car. 3D usefulness other than porn. Right, I don't think it's that useful for porn. It's mostly Spider-Man movies and animated cartoons. But anyway, so I never really found anything more about any of this 3D Lee Harvey Oswald business, but then today I was searching for more stereo realist stuff, and I found this. This is a transcription of some interviews, first with Lee Harvey Oswald's brother, where he is saying that he's shown these 2 cameras. One of them is a Russian, I think this is the 120 camera. That's the Kuera 2. And then the other is the stereo realist, but his brother said that he really wasn't familiar with the exact cameras that his brother owned to say if these were or were not his. And then Marina Oswald said, oh yeah, I recognize that camera, and she identified it as one that he bought in Russia, but she could not identify the 3D camera. So, I mean, take that for what you will. Just because this was written in 1963, does it mean it's true? How do we know that Marina wasn't lying and setting him up? There's no other mention of the stereo realist anywhere in that document. And somewhere I saw it alleged, maybe it was elsewhere in that document, that that camera was owned by Michael Payne. But so why didn't they ask Ruth Payne? They interview Ruth Payne next in that document. They don't ask her. See, my opinion is Michael and Ruth Payne were associated with the CIA, and that's not a guess. There's a lot of evidence that supports that. I was in communication with a guy for a while who created. What did you think about the release of the JFK files? No, you can't hear me, I guess. Well, how'd you like the assassination? Okay, have a nice day. Michael Payne and Ruth Payne. Michael Payne, I believe his father, or his father, maybe his stepfather. Michael Payne was affiliated with the Bell Helicopter Company, and the Bell Helicopter Company helped Lyndon Johnson get elected to the Senate by providing him with a helicopter that allowed him to campaign a lot more effectively than his competitors who needed to use, I guess, trains or commercial aviation. And then during the Vietnam War, what's the most iconic symbol of the Vietnam War is probably the Huey helicopter. Bell Helicopter sold a lot of helicopters during the Vietnam War. And so you gotta have to sort of ignore this entire military-industrial complex, the fact that Curtis LeMay of the Air Force hated Kennedy, all of these warmongering maniacs, just like right now, it seems like Zelensky and the idiots who make billions of dollars from blowing things up and then sending more things to blow up, those guys want war. And they seem to have tried to kill Trump to get it. You know, this guy Routh, they're saying he's directly affiliated with Ukraine. And we know they tried to kill Trump, or some people say that was stage 2. You're never going to be able to satisfy some people, but my point is, in 1963, just like in 2025, the people who were in the business of making helicopters and planes and bombs and guns, they liked the idea of a war in Vietnam, and they wanted it to go on for a long, long time. And with JFK saying, no, I don't want a war, they wanted to kill him. Additionally, JFK wanted to eliminate something called the oil depletion allowance, which was some sort of a tax arrangement where developers of oil, you know, people who were drilling for oil, got some kind of tax benefit, because the premise was that oil is a depleting resource, and as they spend money drilling for more of it, there's going to be less and less of it, so they need money, or something like that. People can look into the details of it, but basically JFK said, nah, we're getting rid of that. So all these Texas oil millionaires who in the 1960s had designs, I guess, on becoming oil billionaires, they really wanted to kill Kennedy. And I think even above and beyond that, remember, it was only a short time after 1963 that Richard Nixon took the United States off of the gold standard and created the petrodollar, which is an economic system based on the presumption that everybody wants oil. And if we force every single country to conduct transactions related to oil, whether buying or selling, only in dollars, that will create an inherent demand for dollars. People will need dollars to buy oil. People who have oil will only be able to sell it in dollars, and then the dollar will become this incredibly powerful hegemonic tool that the United States will use, like, to bludgeon, you know, Russia or whoever. And that is what they did. So I think there's a much stronger argument that extremely wealthy interests in the United States in the oil and military industries wanted to kill Kennedy. And I just don't understand how people explain how, you know, the Mossad would get the Secret Service to stand down, would get the mayor of Dallas to change the parade route. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that I think if Lyndon Johnson shows up in Dallas, everybody knew who he was. Who was the head of the Mossad in 1963, and who in Dallas knew about that? See, what's with this bagel pub? I feel like there's a million bagel pubs opening all of a sudden. Someone out there was, oh, it's the Jews. Everything. They must be doing it. It's a worldwide conspiracy. So, yeah, I don't think, I'm not at all surprised by what we've seen from this JFK release so far. I just don't think they're going to come out and be like, hey, yeah, you know, we committed murder, and, you know, therefore anybody who had any access to any of this information since then and said nothing is now complicit in murder. So, you know, we got to prosecute all these people as accessories to whatever. I mean, it's just, what is it that people expect to happen? I mean, again, it's good that this information is coming out, but when you think about it, one of the most interesting things about it is the reaction that people are having. You know, find one or two mentions of Jewish people or Israeli intelligence, and then they say, oh, well, the whole the whole thing was their doing. But where is any mention of Michael or Ruth Paine? I was looking at Roger Stone's X feed, and he said there's nothing mentioned about the Paines, and I agree with him. They're incredibly important to this. So just to get back to what I had brought up earlier, in this document, Marina Oswald is saying, no, I don't recognize the 3D camera, but I recognize the other camera. And see, the reason I find that important is because Marina Oswald gave testimony. She's the one who supposedly took the photo in the backyard. And I believe there was some contradiction in her testimony, but the backyard photo, what's really interesting, was photographed on 120 roll film, which is a large format much bigger than 35 millimeter film. I think this dude's having a day. Seems like drug use. Anyway, Roger Stone was saying nothing from the Paines. So there's a lot of directions that this could go in. You could be one of the people who says everything was done by the Jews and everything else is a cover-up, or something else happened. Let's explore the possibility that the CIA, the FBI, members of the military and the government of the United States were the driving force behind this assassination, and they utilized Corsicans and French people and Israelis and Italian mafia and a wide variety of criminals and intelligence operatives who sometimes run in similar circles, but they use those guys to execute, right? When Charles shows us that apartment in Penang, obviously he didn't lay every tile in the place. He didn't paint the walls. He didn't move the furniture in. But he is the guy who found that apartment building, made the plan, got the resources together, paid the individuals to do the things that needed to be done to get the job done. Charles was responsible for the procurement and creation of that apartment. And so that's what I'm talking about. I'm not denying that Israeli individuals and Mossad and maybe even all the way up to the top of the Israeli government, I don't know. It does seem that they knew about it and had involvement, but the notion that they did it or they drove it, it just seems absurd to me, particularly in 1963 when Israel was a young, sort of in a tenuous position. Doesn't make any sense. But we know that Lyndon Johnson does a lot of scumbaggery stuff, like tell somebody to kill Kennedy. Lyndon Johnson himself, in a very awkward Walter Cronkite interview near the end of his life, near the end of Johnson's life, Lyndon Johnson told Walter Cronkite that he was never satisfied that there wasn't some kind of conspiracy. And it's a weird thing to say, but back to this document where Marina Oswald says, I don't recognize the 3D camera. What if Marina Oswald is in on the idea of setting up Lee Harvey Oswald? Do you really think that the CIA would be above setting a woman on a guy to get him to fall in love with her? And then what's the natural course? If you're 20 or 30 and you're in love with somebody, you might marry him. So I think the CIA or whoever would do this would have that in mind. And the idea would be you embed yourself as closely to the person as possible and then strike at the moment when they can't possibly defend. Did people see this interview that I did a few years ago with John Kiriakou, former CIA agent, operative? This is what your money is doing. This lady's walking around with a baby selling candy, helping no one, including herself and that baby. I'm telling you, maniac weather. Anyway, in that interview with John Kiriakou, he spoke about the reprehensible things that his wife did and said at his trial, and he felt extremely betrayed by her. I believe they have children together, and in the interview I asked him if he felt that the CIA had set him up with this wife and that to deliberately betray him, and that she was never... I mean, think about that. What a thing to contemplate. But I don't know. I felt that John got emotionally paused when I asked him that, because I think it's something that he's contemplated. But let's contemplate that. I'm not saying I can prove that that happened, but he did meet her in Russia. There's all this weird stuff with this guy George de Mohrenschildt, who committed suicide like the day before he was supposed to testify in 1972 or whatever it was. And there's a lot of there's some recording of the gunshot. Anyway, my point is the notion that Marina Oswald could have been a spy whose role was to help frame Lee Harvey. And what if there are photos or evidence contained in that 3D camera? There's some reason they don't want you looking at that. They want you looking at this. I don't know. I'm just saying, I hope we get to see those slides, because I'm just super curious. Do they have pictures of Judith Vary Baker on there? Do they have pictures of Oswald traveling to Russia? Do they have pictures of things that he might have done that we have no idea about? Does he have pictures of his friends and associates on there? Is there a Jack Ruby photo on there? There's lots of rumors and people who have said that they met Lee Harvey Oswald with Jack Ruby and that they knew each other. I don't know. I mean, I haven't spent that much time in Dallas. I mean, I've been there a bunch of times, but I can't say I've ever worked there and walked the streets having lunch daily and know the town. But actually, Hawkins used to say that sometime in the late 60s or early 70s, he went to Dallas and he went to Dealey Plaza to just kind of look at it, and he got a haircut from Jack Ruby's barber. And that guy said, everybody in Dallas knows there was a conspiracy. The barber told Hawkins that. So what I'm saying is Dallas, it's not New York City, and in 1963, it's a small town. I think people know each other. The notion that Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby might know each other doesn't seem crazy. We don't know what would be on those photos. So, just because something is written in 1963 and unredacted now, doesn't mean that they didn't put some deliberate lie there back in 1963. Just look at how they operate now. And let's take the Port of Charleston as an example, because I do think it is a template for this type of blame it on the patsy type of thing, where you set something up, you have George tell me, oh, there's, radiological material on this thing, go call the Port of Charleston. And all they're trying to do is get this particular piece of evidence to blame me. And that would have been a recording of me talking to the Coast Guard saying there's a dirty bomb. What's the key evidence against Lee Harvey Oswald? Didn't they find the rifle in the Payne's garage? The Mannlicher Carcano that they said, oh, this is Lee Harvey Oswald's rifle, and we got it from this house where his wife is, and his neighbors or whoever they are said it's his. And they just sold everybody on that evidence. Lee Harvey Oswald, the moment they got him, said, I didn't shoot anybody. I'm a patsy. The Dallas police did a paraffin test, which was a gunshot residue test. It wasn't 1763, it was 1963. They had a lot of technology. And the paraffin test said that Lee Harvey Oswald had not fired a rifle that day. So, I mean, there's certain physical evidence like that that is sort of extremely difficult to ignore. So, I mean, how does that affect the whole the Jews did it theory when there's certain things that we just know aren't true. There's also a really good study that was done by James Fetzer. Used to have a crew of guys who were working on this, and they did podcasts that sometimes were crazy, but some were extremely good. And I forget the guy's name who did this photogrammetric analysis of various photos of Raphael Cruz, but he gave a very, very compelling presentation that Raphael Cruz was there with Lee Harvey Oswald at the International Trade Mart in New Orleans in August. And the International Trade Mart is where the JFK motorcade was headed, the Dallas International Trade Mart. So I don't know, did the Jews tell Lee Harvey Oswald to go hang out with Ted Cruz's father? And then did the Jews use that to help Ted Cruz become a senator? And is the fact that people like Ted Cruz is still a senator now and Raphael Cruz is still alive, would that have any impact on the 60 plus years of deciding not to release this stuff? Or did Israel do all that? I don't know. I don't know. I just look at this evidence and try to form my own opinions. You might look at the same evidence and come to a completely different conclusion, but it is my opinion that you have to willfully ignore a lot of extremely compelling evidence to arrive at the conclusion that Israel assassinated JFK in the way that Charles obtained and furnished his apartment. That doesn't mean that Charles painted every single square in the place, but he came up with the idea, he put the resources together, and he made it happen. That's what the CIA and the rogue elements of the United States government did with regard to the JFK assassination, and I think it's extremely clear that Lyndon Johnson and all of the people who fell in line after that were on board, or this information would have been released in 1964. Did Israel put together the Warren Commission and all of these Gerald Ford, who would later become president? Did Israel appoint Gerald Ford as president, or was that Richard Nixon when he might have been negotiating to keep himself out of jail for the rest of his life in the way that Trump was doing? There's a lot of similarities, you know. They start with legal pressure, and you know, Nixon wasn't in the same scenario and wasn't the same guy as Trump, so we're in uncharted waters right now. But I would really like to see, you know what, I think I might have to go back to the National Archives, because one of the things that Anna Paulina Luna posted on X this morning that is obviously correct, because people were upset, oh, you're not releasing it fast enough, this and that. She said, look, it's all been released. It's just there's like a limited number of people now working at the, it's like this, how does it get on the internet, right? Like classified, locked in a box, you can't look at it, that's one thing. Unclassified, out of the box is another thing. But how does it get from the box in College Park, Maryland, or the thousands of boxes, to the internet in an organized way? It obviously takes a lot of people scanning stuff and uploading stuff. The other thing that I noticed is, I got to look up this guy's name. There's a filmmaker who I was in touch with a while ago. The movie has come out. It's called like Mrs. Payne and the Assassination or something like that. And it's all about interviews with Ruth Payne and, you know, what was going on. Now this looks like a radio problem for me. What do we have going on here? I don't even want to walk under that. Anyway, the assassination in Mrs. Payne. No. You're riding the wrong fucking way, stupid! Fuck you, asshole! It's riding the wrong way. Fucking schmuck. you dumb motherfucker! Follow the direction of traffic, you son of a bitch! What? You're going the wrong fucking way, stupid! You're a danger to public safety! Go fuck yourself, moron! You see the line? It's pointing the opposite direction you're riding! Fuck you! Fucking idiot! He insists on riding the wrong way. Alright, so people are upset that I get mad like that. Sorry. See, that's the same kind of guy who's like, free Luigi. You don't like the way healthcare works? Just shoot somebody. There are literally people walking around here who would put Luigi Mangione in Congress tomorrow. There's no negotiating with these people. They need to be put in jail, locked in a box. You see how they do something completely in the wrong, and it's my fault. Guy's driving the wrong way and telling me to look. I'm looking where the traffic is. And the cops won't do anything. Never a dull moment is right. Tim says the CIA's high-level circle is known as the rabbis. I don't know anything about that, but I'd be surprised if they were Jewish. Remember that idiot, the Ginger Frankenstein? What's that stupid idiot's name? Patrick Byrne. He refers to Warren Buffett as his rabbi. And he said it many times. And Charles was like, well, that's just like like an investing, people say that about the guy who is their mentor and whatever. I said, yeah, that's fine. But if I went on to Patrick Byrne's podcast and said, oh, Charles Ortel, yeah, he's my N-word, N-I-G-G-A. How would that be received by black people? You know? Now, when Lee says that Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro is his rabbi, he's being serious. Yaakov Shapiro is a rabbi, and Lee is friends with him and has been instructed by him and mentored by him in certain ways, and Lee speaks to him for advice and knowledge. That's what a rabbi does. This guy's just using the term. So, Tim, I don't know what they mean. Sir, have you heard, excuse me. I'm really late. Have you heard this, that they say all right, never mind. That guy looked like he would know about rabbis, but you see, you can't just approach a Jewish person on the street right now without them getting super tense because everybody wants to beat us up. And what's interesting is to see the incredible hatred coming out of people. I don't want to censor it. There's a lot of people who say, oh, take Kanye West off. No, Lee, I want to hear what these people have to say. And I want to know who the bigoted, small-minded idiots are so I can stay away from them. But anyway, I don't know what that means, Tim. It's interesting. But I just really don't think that Israel controls the United States. I think that the creation of Israel was done at the behest of the same kind of globalist powers that created the American Revolution and World War I and World War II, and they want to create a condition where there are two extremely polarized sides, and then they want to pit those sides against each other, whether it's black versus white, Nazi versus Jew, Palestinian versus Israeli. They want those two sides. Polarize and personalize. It's an Alinskyite tactic. So all of these people who are participating in this and can't get above the fray and realize that this is a patsy situation. Same thing with 9/11. This is why Ian Carroll is either a liar or an actual idiot. Because it's so obvious that if you wanted to do a crime, that you'd think to hire someone to do it, and then if it went badly and they got caught, you'd try to blame it on them. In fact, that's nearly the whole entire reason for hiring someone to do a crime, rather than doing it yourself, so that if they get caught, they get blamed. Why would Israel hire 5 Israeli guys? They're so sophisticated that they can defy the FBI and the CIA to destroy the towers. The art students gain access and paint the thermite inside the elevator shafts. And this is all planned by Israel. Marvin Bush was the CEO of the security company in charge of security at the World Trade Center. Building 7 had CIA, FBI, all kinds of FEMA command office and everything. So you're telling me that the Mossad and Israel are sophisticated enough to penetrate the entire intelligence, security, and law enforcement apparatus of the NYPD, the FBI, the CIA, the DIA, what are the 17 other things that are supposed to be looking at this? They're smart enough that they can defy all of that and put together this incredibly elaborate plan, but they aren't smart enough to tell the 5 guys that they hired to dance around a van to not do that. And don't make a display out in public where everybody's going to know that you're involved with it. I mean, the whole thing just reeks of shooting a guy, putting him on the ground, putting the gun in his hand, and calling the police and saying this guy just killed himself. It's obviously blaming it on somebody who doesn't logically seem to have done what you're claiming that they did. And okay, maybe you didn't think of that at first. And you're like, oh, you know, there are some people who I've said that to who stop for a minute and realize that makes a lot of sense. And Ian positions himself as this open-minded, thoughtful guy, but you know, that really likely probability never enters into his calculation. So it really causes me to presume that he's got to be doing that deliberately, because I don't think he's stupid. I've spoken to him enough to know that. He's very intelligent, in fact. Can't quite gauge exactly how traditionally educated he is, but he has inherent intelligence, and I think that that comes through in how he communicates and how he finds information and processes information. So again, that's a contradiction. I don't see how someone could be so smart and so skilled at putting together complicated pieces of puzzles and then totally miss this. So seems contradictory. I don't like these contradictions that don't make sense, and it's not that I don't like them, it's that I can't resolve them in my mind to satisfaction. So it makes me think that something else is likely going on. Yeah, Ian is a Fugazi, for sure. Because also, look at how quickly, I mean, yeah, it happens, but it just seems that there are these people who come out of nowhere and they start tweeting about things, and then the next thing you know, they're like 500,000 followers, and they are the authority on whatever. But anyway, we'll talk more. There's a lot to discuss also about Boasberg, and just discovered this other judge. All these judges have family members who are on the nonprofit grift. So tonight, I'll be speaking with Charles about that. We're going to have a lot of details to go over. If you're not already a sponsor, now is a great time to become one. Just go on to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, or subscribestar.com, or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. People can see I'm not going around trying to start problems with people. That idiot was doing something dangerous that he shouldn't have done, that was risking my safety. And instead of saying, hey man, sorry, he's got to immediately tell me what to do. So what the hell is wrong with these people? And we have people like that in Congress, down there at the court, insisting that what? You release the murderers and let the guy who's assisting a terrorist organization have a green card to come here and help overthrow the government? I don't think so.